My name is Amir Nathoo, and I'm the founder and CEO of Outschool, a platform with 140,000 live virtual classes for kids aged 3 to 18.
And I'm Justin Dent, the executive director of Outschool, the independent nonprofit partner to Outschool, focused on providing learners who experience racial and economic marginalization with the opportunity and agency to nurture a lifelong love of learning.
And we are your hosts for the Outspoken podcast. We're going to dive into issues in ed and ed tech that affect American families' ability to learn. We aim to spread love of learning and disrupt barriers that keep kids from learning on their own terms. Let's set learning free.
Amir, let's help listeners get to know us a bit better. Can you share some of what inspired you to start Outschool and how your background has led you to where you are today?
Yes, there were many inspirations in starting Outschool. One I'd call out in particular is a personal inspiration based on my own experiences growing up and learning. I was very fortunate in that both my parents were teachers, and they supported me in my education, not just in terms of supporting me with what I did in school, but also with what I did out of school. And one particular learning experience springs to mind. When I was age around 5, they bought me a computer to play games on. But they also noticed that I was excited to teach myself how to program with some books. And they spotted that interest and they helped me develop it by finding me teachers outside of regular school to pursue their interests. And they didn't do that because they thought it could turn into a career or they thought it was important. They just thought it was really valuable to help me pursue things that I was interested in, to pursue a love of learning. And of course, it turned out that it was extremely valuable, and it did turn into a career for me in software. But the lesson here isn't that everyone should learn how to program. Maybe that's valuable, but I don't think that's the key lesson here. I think the key lesson here is that if we can support kids outside of regular school to pursue their interests, that can be incredibly, incredibly valuable. And so that was one of the key inspirations behind me starting Outschool. And Justin, I'd love to hear from you. What inspired you in your journey to come to outschool.org and lead it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and thanks for sharing that story, Amir. It's so important, right? The time that we spend outside of the classroom. And I think that was really clear for me from the time I was a young kid. Neither of my parents were educators, but my mom was deeply committed to education and fought tooth and nail to get me into the schools in New York City that she did. But I did have a dear teacher very close to me who was my godmother, my Aunt Hope. And I think I told you the story of my Aunt Hope, Amir, when we first started talking about Outschool.org. And my Aunt Hope was a New York City public school educator for her entire career and had been retired by the time I came around into the picture. But I spent every day after school reading with Aunt Hope, who had been an English teacher. And that inspired my love of learning and of reading in particular. And really any rabbit hole that I wanted to go down, Aunt Hope would help me to go down that. We'd go to the library, we'd go to the Barnes and Nobles and find the book on whatever question I had. And we would read that book together. And I think that there's no doubt that I wouldn't be where I am today if it hadn't been for her just giving me the care and attention that she did in terms of really inspiring my love of learning. And I realized quite early on that a lot of kids like me going through the New York City public school education system didn't have that kind of champion at home and didn't have someone that they could go back home and read to and read with. And that is when I really got inspired to start my journey towards educational equity. And I think today it's still one of the anecdotes that really inspires me to do the work that we do at outschool.org.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing that, Justin. I remember when you shared that story when we first met, and I realized we're going to be a team in this journey and this mission to inspire kids to love learning and find ways to support them on their learning journey. So thank you.
You know, Amir, I'm so happy that we've been able to be on this journey together over the past few years now. And it's gone so quickly. And, you know, I'm so happy that people are here for this introductory episode and the next step in our partnership and our work together. You know, this podcast is for education change makers who really want to understand the issues so that they can help to solve them better. And folks who want to hear about what's working and what's not so that they can either replicate the success that we're seeing or they can avoid the mistakes that have already happened in the field and learn from them.
Yes, that's right, Justin. Anyone who sees the potential and power of education to advance equity in our society and instill a love of learning in children so they can reach their potential, we hope to join this podcast and hear from both our successes and our mistakes, and we hope to advance the field through our discussion here. When I was building Outschool, I wish there was a resource for me to tap in to learn about the current state of the art, not just in terms of traditional education, but where the innovation was happening, where the change makers were, so that I could learn from them. And with this show, my plan is to give listeners practical insights from the edges of education, where the change is happening and the innovation is happening, and look to connect the audience to inspiring leaders in the space. Because right now, there's tremendous amounts of change in education and challenge that needs to be addressed. And I think that by connecting listeners with the innovators, we can move the space forward and move our collective thinking forward.
I've learned so much over the course of the past few years about how folks are really innovating local education models in their own communities and how they're really advancing change for learners who have often been underserved by the K through 12 system. And we're going to have a chance to hear their voices on this show and really bring folks who have been working on education equity for decades or for generations onto this program and onto this podcast to have conversations with them to ensure that we're having representation from all voices, not just those that have traditional privilege or those that have often been highlighted or showcased as we talk about innovation, but we're really going to get onto the grassroots level and talk to partners of ours that we've worked with or partners that we may have heard about from folks like yourselves who are really changing education from the ground up.
We'll be inviting guests to the show who are thought leaders. And as Justin shared, not just thought leaders who are recognized as such, but people who are really doing the work on the ground in their communities and are innovating. So we're going to have a wide variety of guests on this show, but all will have invested in the most transformative education technology solutions today. And when I talk about technology solutions, I don't just mean what we traditionally think of as online solutions. I mean, new ways of working, new ways of being, I count as technology as well. So we're going to bring in community leaders, educators, and families to talk about their innovation in education.
And in keeping with the name Outspoken, we're also going to invite guests who have a strong point of view. And we're not going to shy away from challenging them or challenging the listeners of our podcast to think differently and to think outside of the box.
For our first season, we'll be posting episodes 2 times per month, and each episode will be about 30 minutes long. So be sure to hit subscribe and check out the show notes for all the links and ways to get engaged with us between each episode on social.
The podcast will be available for you to listen on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms like iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and many others.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. We really appreciate you coming to this and trusting us to guide you through some potential opportunities and pitfalls in education innovation.
We'll catch you on the next episode.